Hey everyone. If you're playing NTE and you've recently pulled Lacrimosa, then congratulations. You've just obtained one of the strongest main DPS characters in the current meta. But I think we all know that having Lacrimosa alone isn't enough. The real challenge is figuring out who to pair her with, how to structure your rotations, and which team compositions are actually worth investing your resources into. After spending a lot of time testing different setups, researching character interactions, and analyzing team performance, today I'm going to share what I believe are the top 5 strongest team comps for Lacrimosa. We'll be covering everything from Discord quick swap teams to Blossom compositions, mono Scorch setups, and even mono dot strategies. I'll break down each team in detail, including recommended gear, rotations, strengths, weaknesses, and the situations where each composition performs best. By the end of this video, you'll have a much clearer idea of which team fits both your account and your preferred playstyle. So let's get started. Before we get into the team comps themselves, it's important to understand why Lacrimosa is considered such a powerful DPS in the first place. Lacrimosa is an S-rank Chaos character, and the core of her kit revolves around a unique mechanic called Nightmare, a specialized form of damage over time. As Nightmare stacks build up on an enemy, Lacrimosa's damage continues to ramp higher and higher. The real payoff comes when those Nightmare stacks are applied to a target that has already been broken. Once the proper conditions are met, her Tomato Banquet passive can trigger Discord, unleashing a massive burst of additional damage. This interaction is one of the main reasons why Lacrimosa has become such a dominant force in the current meta. When it comes to equipment, her best-in-slot weapon is currently the Last Rose. This weapon increases both ATK and crit damage based on the number of active dot effects affecting the target. In other words, the more dots you can maintain, the harder Lacrimosa hits. For cartridges, I almost always recommend Diabolos. One of its biggest advantages is the ability to ignore up to 24% of an enemy's chaos resistance, which becomes extremely valuable in endgame content where enemy resistances can significantly reduce your damage output. As for rune priorities, you generally want to focus on crit DMG percent and chaotic DMG percent. At the same time, try to maintain a crit rate to crit damage ratio of roughly 1 to 2 for the most efficient scaling. Once you understand these fundamentals, the logic behind Lacrimosa's strongest team compositions becomes much easier to follow. The first team, and in my opinion the strongest team in the current meta, is the Discord quick swap composition featuring Lacrimosa, Daffodill, Sakiri, and either Haniel or Fadia. This is the team I've used the most, and the results have been genuinely impressive in Beyond the Rails as well as other high-risk endgame content. The roles are very straightforward. Lacrimosa serves as the main DPS, continuously applying Nightmare stacks and maintaining dote pressure. Daffodill acts as the primary breaker, with the main objective of destroying enemy defenses as quickly as possible to create opportunities for Discord. Sakiri functions as both a dote support and an AoE enabler. Her passive increases the entire team's ATK, but more importantly, she enables Scorch through the interaction between Chaos and Incantation. She also enhances the effectiveness of Lacrimosa's dot damage through additional Scorch-related effects. The fourth slot belongs to either Haniel or Fadia, both of whom provide access to Nova. Haniel leans more toward healing and sustain, while Fadia contributes damage based on a percentage of the enemy's maximum HP, making her the stronger choice against high health bosses. For gear, Lacrimosa should use the Last Rose together with the Diabolos Cartridge set, as mentioned earlier. Sakiri performs best with Good Boy's Grand Adventure. For Daffodill, Youthful Fantasy remains one of the strongest options available, even for free-to-play players. Haniel and Fadia should be equipped according to their respective Psyche builds, with Umbrella for Haniel and Eternal Waltz for Fadia. The rotation requires a fair amount of practice. The basic sequence begins with Daffodill entering first to rapidly break the enemy and create the break state. Once the target is broken, Lacrimosa takes the field and begins applying Da-T effects as aggressively as possible, using her counter mechanics to build Nightmare stacks at maximum speed. At the same time, Sakiri rotates in to trigger Scorch. Scorch occurs when Chaos and Incantation interact, adding another layer of damage over time pressure. Haniel or Fadia should activate Nova whenever sufficient Esper is available, contributing both additional damage and valuable team support. The entire rotation moves extremely quickly and revolves around constant quick swapping between Lacrimosa and Daffodill. What I love most about this team is the combination of rapid break generation and explosive discord damage. Once discord activates on a broken target, the damage from Lacrimosa's Tomato Banquet passive skyrockets. This interaction is the primary reason why the team is considered top tier. That being said, I want to be completely honest. This is not a beginner-friendly team. The execution difficulty is very high because you need precise swap timing, proper Esper management, and consistent discord activation after each break window. If your timing is slow, if you miss a rotation, or if you hesitate during swaps, your overall DPS can drop significantly. That's the trade-off of this composition. The damage ceiling is incredibly high, but it also demands a high level of player skill to unlock its full potential. The second team is Scorch plus T, featuring Lacrimosa, Sakiri, Adler, and either Fadia or Baicang. If the Discord Quick Swap team represents the highest possible damage ceiling, then this composition focuses more on consistency, comfort, and flexibility. Adler is honestly one of the most underrated characters when it comes to supporting Lacrimosa. His Evil's Bane skill applies a dot effect that lasts for 10 seconds while also reducing the enemy's ATK and Esper generation. This does two important things at once. First, it contributes another active dot source for Sakiri's passive. Second, it weakens enemies and makes fights significantly easier for Lacrimosa to control. Baicang offers a different form of support through his ultimate, which applies a powerful 12-second dot effect. And whenever Baicang spends time on the field, incantation interactions can continuously trigger Scorch reactions, adding even more pressure over time. Fadia fills the final slot as a Nova enabler. As mentioned earlier, her HP-draining Nova damage becomes especially effective against bosses with massive health pools. What makes this team so effective is the sheer number of simultaneous dot sources. Lacrimosa provides Nightmare. Sakiri applies additional damage through Scorch interactions. Adler contributes Evil's Bane, and Baicang adds his ultimate dot. With so many effects active at once, reaching the maximum value of Sakiri's passive becomes extremely easy. Since Sakiri grants a 25% damage increase for each active dot effect on the target, up to 4 stacks, this team can maintain the full bonus very consistently. That translates into a substantial damage multiplier throughout the entire fight. The rotation is also much easier compared to the Discord Quick Swap team. The core rotation revolves around Lacrimosa, Sakiri, and Adler, while Fadia or Baicang rotate in whenever their utility is needed. There is far less pressure to perform rapid swaps, making the composition much more forgiving for average players. Even if your execution isn't perfect, the team still performs extremely well. I've personally cleared 3-star R12 beyond the rails using this composition, and found the experience relatively comfortable. The biggest downside is the roster requirement. You need Adler, Sakiri, and at least one of either Fadia or Baicang, which means the team can be somewhat expensive to assemble depending on your account. You still need to manage Esper carefully as well. If you focus too heavily on maintaining Scorch while neglecting Discord opportunities or vice versa, your overall DPS won't reach its full potential. But compared to the Discord Quick Swap team, this composition offers a much more relaxed experience while still delivering excellent results in high-end content. The third team is the Blossom team, and honestly, this is the one I find the most fun to play because its mechanics are incredibly unique. The lineup consists of Lacrimosa, Sakiri, Nanally, and Zero. Blossom is a completely separate gameplay system within NTE, and this team takes full advantage of it. Zero serves as the team's primary Esper battery, constantly spamming skills to generate energy for everyone. While her direct damage output isn't particularly high, she summons blossoms every time she uses a skill, making her a crucial part of the team's engine. Nanally plays an even more important role. Her ultimate generates a massive number of blossoms all at once, and she also increases the maximum blossom limit to 6. This dramatically boosts the team's ability to flood the battlefield with blossom effects. Sakiri contributes through her Flux Prison skill, grouping enemies tightly together so that blossom explosions can hit multiple targets at the same time. Meanwhile, Lacrimosa takes on a more off-field role in this composition. She applies her do-T effects and nightmare stacks, then rotates out to let the Blossom engine and the rest of the team do the heavy lifting. The Blossom rotation is much more relaxed compared to the first two teams. Zero generates Esper, Nanally unleashes her ultimate, Sakiri pulls enemies together. The Blossoms detonate and cover the battlefield with AoE damage. Lacrimosa rotates in to refresh nightmare stacks and can immediately rotate back out afterward. There is no need for advanced quick swapping or highly technical execution, making this team much more approachable for players who aren't comfortable with fast-paced mechanics. This composition is exceptionally strong in content filled with multiple enemies. Every Blossom activation triggers additional hits, and Nanaly's AoE damage combined with Sakiri's Flux Prison creates a non-stop chain of explosions across the battlefield. The result is an overwhelming amount of area damage that can clear waves of enemies incredibly quickly. The trade-off, however, is that this team lacks both Nova and Discord compared to the first two compositions. Because of that, its single-target damage against bosses is noticeably weaker. If you're facing a stage that revolves around bursting down one massive boss as quickly as possible, you may want to consider one of the other teams instead. But when it comes to mob-heavy content and pure battlefield chaos, the Blossom team is easily one of the most entertaining and satisfying setups Lacrimosa can play in. The fourth team is Mono Scorch, featuring Lacrimosa, Sakiri, Daffodill, and Baicang. Every character in this lineup belongs to either the Chaos or Incantation element, which means the only reaction you'll be triggering throughout the fight is Scorch. The biggest strength of this team is its focus. You don't have to worry about managing multiple reaction types. You don't have to keep track of Nova windows. You don't have to plan around Discord activations. All you need to do is maintain constant Scorch uptime and keep stacking damage as aggressively as possible. Baicang provides a significant critical rate boost while he is on the field, helping the team maintain strong and consistent damage output. Daffodill contributes fast break generation, allowing enemies to be pressured more quickly. Sakiri continues her familiar role as the team's primary dot amplifier, enhancing the effectiveness of all the damage over time effects being applied. That being said, I have to admit that this is probably the most mechanically demanding team on the entire list when it comes to pure execution. To fully optimize Mono Scorch, you need to perform a fairly precise combo sequence. The basic technique involves waiting for Lacrimosa to complete her 5th normal attack, immediately swapping to Daffodill to activate her Phantom Step skill, and then instantly swapping back to Lacrimosa. The entire sequence happens within only a few frames. If your timing is even slightly off, your DPS drops immediately. This is definitely not a team I would recommend to players who are unfamiliar with high-skill gameplay or advanced quick swap mechanics. Another weakness of the composition is its complete lack of Nova and Discord. As a result, the team's flexibility is significantly lower than some of the other options on this list. When facing enemies with reaction-resistant shields or particularly high chaos resistance, Mono Scorch has very few alternative ways to maintain its damage output. It's a team with an incredibly high skill ceiling and very rewarding damage potential, but it demands precise execution and offers much less room for error than the more forgiving compositions. The final team is Mono Dot, featuring Lacrimosa, Sakiri, Adler, and Baicang. This is the most stable and beginner-friendly team among the top 5. The idea behind the composition is very straightforward. Stack as many different dot effects on the enemy as possible so that Sakiri's passive reaches its maximum 4 stacks, granting a massive 100% increase to overall damage. Lacrimosa serves as the primary damage dealer, continuously applying nightmare stacks throughout the fight. Adler contributes with Evil's Bane, adding a 10-second Doti effect while also providing useful debuffs. Baicang brings his ultimate, which applies a powerful 12-second Dot effect. Meanwhile, Sakiri not only adds additional dot through her own kit, but also amplifies the damage of the entire team. One of the biggest advantages of this composition is how easy it is to play. You don't need rapid swaps. You don't need complicated timing windows. You don't need to memorize advanced reaction chains. All you really need to do is rotate each character onto the field at the appropriate time, refresh their dot effects, and then return control to Lacrimosa so she can continue applying nightmare stacks. This is actually the team I recommend most often to friends who are just starting to build Lacrimosa. It's easy to understand, easy to execute, and still delivers very respectable damage output even without perfect gameplay. The biggest drawback is the lack of burst damage. There is no Discord. There is no Nova. Because of that, stages that require you to quickly eliminate enemies or unleash massive amounts of damage within a short window are not where this team performs best. However, for longer encounters that reward consistency and sustained damage over time, Monodot remains one of the most reliable and comfortable options available for Lacrimosa. Now let's wrap everything up with a quick summary to help you decide which team is right for you. If you're an experienced player, comfortable with quick swapping, and looking for the highest possible damage ceiling, then the Discord team featuring Daffodill and either Haniel or Fadia remains the peak of the current meta. If you want a powerful team that's a little easier to operate while still offering excellent performance and flexibility, then the Scorch plugged dot composition with Adler is probably the most balanced and reliable option. If you enjoy large-scale AoE damage, fast map clearing, and don't want to constantly perform advanced quick swaps, then the Blossom team with Nanally and Zero is an incredibly fun choice. Mono Scorch is best suited for players who want to challenge themselves with the most mechanically demanding playstyle on this list. And if you're just getting started with Lacrimosa, Monodot is easily the best entry point thanks to its simple gameplay, consistent performance, and forgiving execution requirements. Of course, the meta is always evolving, and one of Lacrimosa's greatest strengths is her ability to adapt to a wide variety of team compositions depending on your roster. At the end of the day, the most important thing is understanding how Nightmare, Discord, and Scorch work together so that you can fully unlock her potential. If you found this video helpful, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me continue creating more NTE guides, team building content, and in-depth meta-analysis in the future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.